Yeah, I mean, it was all right. It was fine. It's weird because it's so obviously made for Manhattan and for being a New York thing. It's about being in, it's all about being in Manhattan. Wait a minute, my door has just rung. Give me a second.
Okay. For our listeners, Phil has gone to answer his door. I want you to know that he is currently exercising a defense of the musical Hamilton, which, for those of you unfamiliar, is about 80% white guy rap. So just keep that in mind when Phil comes back and starts talking again. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I am your host, Connor Rebush. With me, as always, is the Right Honorable Philip McKenzie, and we are here to discuss, well, you guessed it, people punching each other in the face. Last weekend, you may recall, and if you haven't heard of it already, there was quite a notable face punching that went down. An early knockout of the year contender, no doubt, from Jorge Masvidal. One punch sent Darren Till to the canvas and ended the fight in that instant. We are going to be talking about that a little later on, but first, it's the previews. We've got yet another event coming up next week. My goodness, Phil, when do we get a weekend off? I think, actually, we're almost there, aren't we? First week of April has no event.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. I'm very, very slowly starting to get tired of these cards, but they're about to get really good. So it's been a pretty good stretch as far as interminable fight stretches go, covering the sport. And next week, we've got a card in Nashville, Tennessee, with the main event between Stephen Thompson, the famous Wonderboy, and Anthony Pettis. We're also going to be talking about, let's see, the co-main event, Curtis Blades versus Justin Willis. Our boy John McDessie's on this card, Phil, but I don't think we're talking about that. Instead, I think we're going to be covering Macy Barber versus J.J. Aldridge, maybe some other stuff besides. We'll see what we get to based on both time and interest. But the main event, Stephen Thompson, Anthony Pettis, truly the greatest spectacle of kickboxing skill this sport will have ever seen.
This is definitely what the UFC is hoping to get from this.
Does that seem transparent?
Yeah. The UFC wants some awesome gifts out of this fight, and there is a possibility that they won't get them. Stephen Thompson has kind of stunk up the joint in a whole bunch of his recent fights, and I think they're basically throwing a fairly aggressive and defensively lackluster lightweight at him in the hope that he's going to fuck him up in some cool ways.
I'm going to be optimistic here and say that they'll probably get at least a little of what they're looking for. You and I last week were in agreement that Till Masvidal had the potential to be a boring fight. It certainly was not. But we saw why it had the potential. I want to give Stephen Thompson a little bit of credit. Luca Bourdon, if you're listening, please mute for the next 30 seconds. It's been a stretch of dull fights, all right? But there's been factors that explain it to my mind, okay? It goes back to the Rory McDonald fight. It was not nearly as fun as we wanted it to be. But basically, Rory McDonald got put into a defensive shell very early and never managed to get out of it. Also, his main tactic appeared to be Imanari rolls. So he didn't seem that well prepared to deal with Stephen Thompson's style. And if you can't deal with Stephen Thompson's style, if you can't make him fight, or at least like Jorge Masvidal did in their bout last November, come after him, then you are going to get a slow fight out of him. And then the other three in this stretch, two of them are against Tyron Woodley, who may be at least partly culpable for the pace of those fights, and the other was Darren Till, who is also at least partly culpable. These are low-volume fighters who will allow a sort of staring match to elapse, and I don't think that's Anthony Pettis, to be honest. I just don't think Anthony Pettis, there's a lot of things you can say about him. You can critique him and be frustrated because he doesn't develop or improve or seem to change in any way, and so on and so forth. But the man he definitely has a fighter's mentality. given the opportunity to walk his opponent down and try to hit them with hard shots, he pretty much always does. In fact, I can't recall a fight of Anthony Pettis's where he had a low output opponent and didn't do his best to carve them up. So at the very least, I think we're probably in for some exchanges and lots of kicking in this fight.
Yep. Anthony Pettis has not really had a boring fight ever, with the possible exception of the Clay Guida loss, maybe,
yeah, right.
And that was primarily because Guida just held him down.
Yep.
His defensive holes and his massive offensive capabilities tend to mean that either he's dealing out like highlight reel KOs or he's on the tail end of ass whoopings. So did you encounter the same problem I did, which was looking through these guys' resumes and trying to find appropriate analogs?
Yeah. I was like, how many good kickers has Stephen Thompson fought? And Darren Till was like the best one.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, how many karate dudes has Anthony Pettis fought? And like Ben Henderson was the best parallel I could find.
Yeah. You know what I found to be one of the more useful ones? It was actually the one that you would think is because a lot of the narrative around this fight has been around the size differential. So you wouldn't really necessarily think that Holloway versus Pettis is a particularly illuminating fight to look at. But it was from one perspective, which is that it kind of exposed Anthony Pettis' footwork in both directions. This was what we saw with Junior Dos Santos, right? Is that we learned that Junior, we learned pretty early on that Junior isn't very good defensively in terms of his footwork, and that he can be pushed into the cage, he river dances off it, all this other kind of stuff. We also learned against Alistair Overeem, but he couldn't actually follow people very well either. Mm-hmm. In the Holloway Pettis fight, what we saw from Anthony Pettis was pretty much he got drawn into just sort of following Holloway around the cage a lot. I think what we saw from him is that, what we saw from both those fights is that footwork is footwork. Like, normally, if you're particularly bad moving backwards, you're probably actually pretty bad moving forwards as well.
Yeah.
And this, I think, this seemed to be the most concerning part of it to me. And because otherwise, in a lot of ways, and I think you alluded to this a bit, it's not actually a terrible matchup for Anthony Pettis because he can kick with Stephen Thompson. Mm-hmm. And I think we've seen a lot of the time in pure striking matches in, these weight class changing fights, it has been, the small guy has been able to kind of just blitz out and fuck the bigger guy up, or girl in the case of the Cyborg Nunez fight.
There's a possibility it could look for Stephen Thompson, the way Stephen Thompson looked for Robert Whittaker, where it's just like this slightly smaller, quicker guy, you just can't get his timing. Anthony Pettis is probably going to look notably faster than almost anyone Stephen Thompson's fought. So that's a factor worth considering. I like your point about the footwork. The Holloway fight's a great example for that. One that is actually quite similar to the Holloway fight, although with less offensive potency. And this was the one I landed on looking for parallels, was the Edson Barboza fight.
Yep.
Where I think footwork was also the primary difference. And yes, I agree with your point. Like, there are certainly fighters who, they have a mental switch of sorts where when put on the back foot, they just stop throwing. And so maybe that, but if fighters who are bad off the back foot because of their bad footwork are given the chance to fight off the front foot, I agree. More often than not, all the footwork is just bad. And that's been Anthony Pettis' primary problem here. We've complained about a lot of his technique, but it consistently comes down to footwork. It consistently comes down to how do you avoid getting cornered? Or in this case, it will very likely be how do you cut off somebody who is, to give Stephen Thompson yet more credit, very good at not being cornered. And that was the real difference against Barboza, is that it was not a fight. It was contested at a range where Anthony Pettis is dangerous. He got plenty of opportunities to land shots in the early going, but as it turned out, like, Barboza's positioning was just better. Barboza was more consistently in a position that would allow him to land damaging strikes and avoid what was coming back at him. And yeah, Stephen Thompson just has better footwork than Anthony Pettis. There's no two ways around that. No matter what stance he's fighting out of, both of these guys like to switch stances. He's got better pivots. He's got better side steps. He's much more comfortable quickly retreating and then coming back with a counter. And occasionally he even moves his head a little bit, though he really only slips down onto whatever side happens to be his rear leg side at the moment. But he's just a much better mover. And I expect that is going to be the key difference here, that makes the distance that is normally good for Anthony Pettis feel not so good, where he's just not quite getting the right angles to get off his shots consistently. So I really think I do favor Stephen Thompson here, even though, yeah, Pettis is dangerous. Thompson has looked somewhat fragile, and despite his body breaking down by stages, Pettis is still not anything close to fragile. But like, realistically, he is going in there against a bigger guy who is also a better, more technical mover. So I think it's going to be really hard for him to corral Stephen Thompson.
Yeah, this is the thing. When Thompson comes after Pettis with those, when Thompson does choose to pull the trigger on his punches offensively, he tends to come forward behind those flurries. Pettis has not really shown any kind of defensive ability to avoid that kind of thing.
No, nor any counter punches while backing up.
I am curious to see if Pettis can kick with him, and to see if to see how Pettis kicks with him. Like, because Pettis tends to, when he's stance switching, Stephen Thompson, when he stance switches, he is very much a right side guy. So he has, he'll do just sort of front leg side kicks from southpaw, and then he'll switch to more like kind of conventional round kicks when he's in orthodox. It's generally always the right leg, and then he draws back, and it's mostly the rear hand from either stance that he kind of throws as the pull counter when people come in. So the question with Pettis is, he's up against a much bigger dude. So I don't think he should really approach this as an open stance matchup. I think Pettis should try for closed stance, because Pettis is much more ambidextrous than Thompson is. His style is much more mirrored in both sides. He's not as, from this stance you do this, from this stance you do this kind of thing. He's very similar from both from both orthodox and southpaw. I think he should probably approach it as, to try and go close stance on Stephen Thompson. But the thing is, Pettis doesn't really like doing that, because he always wants the open stance body kick, and he always wants to maximize the range. So I'm not sure if he's just going to let Wonderboy get away with just a huge open stance engagement with him. Yeah,
where unless he's much, much faster, he's probably going to have a hard time landing anything, because there's a benefit to, you could say yes, that Pettis is kind of the same guy to both stances, but another way to phrase that would probably be that where Stephen Thompson tends to look to put his weapon of choice in front so he can interrupt his opponent, Pettis mostly thinks about firing whatever's in the back. When he's southpaw, he really wants to throw the big left kick. When he's orthodox, he really wants to throw the big right kick, and same goes for the hands. Do you disagree with
that? Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's almost always going. Yeah, he generally wants the body kick, head kick kind of change up.
Yeah,
I will say that is potentially has some utility if he can force Wonderboy back into the fence.
Sure.
Because one of the reasons why Matt Brown was able to trouble Wonderboy is because Matt Brown is very good at cutting people down when they back up. Is that he's very good at using arcing strikes, coming in behind the body kick to kind of force off, to kind of beat down circular movement. And almost everyone Wonderboy has fought, including Jorge Masvidal and Rory and so on, have been notably extremely linear fighters. They don't have any arcing attacks, right?
Yeah, Masvidal's only notable success in their fight was when he cut Thompson's pivot off with a big left hook.
Yep.
Landed clean, but couldn't reproduce it.
So yeah, there's some, so basically there are some things I'm interested to see if Pettis can do, but it's just the fact that like when Wonderboy is on the offense, when he wants to be, I don't see how Pettis stops him. I can see like how Pettis can trouble Wonderboy's defenses, but I can't really see how Pettis troubles, like how Wonderboy doesn't just go straight through Pettis's.
Yeah, it's really a question of like how, I mean, that's maybe the most interesting dynamic here, is how does Anthony Pettis approach this fight? Does he come in looking to pressure? I think he's always much better when he's coming forward. So can he do that? Will he try to do that? Can he do it consistently against someone whose footwork is so much better than his? And then the other side of that coin is like, well, how does Stephen Thompson react to that? Does he get put into his defensive mode because he has an aggressive opponent if Pettis comes out that way? And if Pettis doesn't come out that way, does Stephen Thompson have the opportunity to be more aggressive? Because I agree, he could probably be a lot more successful if he backed Pettis up and tried to stick him against the fence and keep him on the end of the sidekick. So I think we've got a pretty, I don't know how if it'll necessarily will play out in the most exciting fashion, but there's definitely a really interesting dynamic to decide who really gets their way in this fight. Both guys are limited in exactly the same way to an extent. But as I said, the fact that Stephen Thompson is just technically much better than Anthony Pettis, specifically with the footwork, has me favoring him. I just, however the fight plays out, I think that right there, just like the Barboza fight, like the Barboza and the Holloway fights, you essentially got both Pettises in both of those matches, where he started both of them being a lot more aggressive and then ended up having to be like more defensive as he got picked apart. And in both cases, no matter how the matchup was playing out in the moment, he just couldn't stay on top of his opponent or keep them in front of him where he could hit them. So I got to go with Stephen Thompson to win this one. What about you?
Yeah, I think so. The question is, does he stop Pettis?
Yeah, that is really up in the air. It depends on what kind of matchup we get. Because I could absolutely see it. Like, Stephen Thompson has proven to be a really dangerous counterpuncher. If you just walk into his shots. And Pettis has a great chin, but he's in here against a bigger guy with long reach who is extremely accurate and has good timing. So it only takes one, I'm not willing yet to say that Darren Till doesn't have a good chin just because he got obliterated by a single or a Masvidal punch. It only takes one really good punch, and Stephen Thompson's pretty good at finding them when his opponents do sort of aimlessly follow him around. So I think it's distinctly possible. I'm going to say yes, in fact. I'm going to bank on Anthony Pettis being willing to walk forward, trying to get the job done, and ending up walking into a finishing blow. We've got 5 rounds to work here, so yeah.
I'm going to pick decision, but I think it might be a pretty ugly one by the end of it.
Yeah, who knows? Stephen Thompson, can't trust him. He's just a real. Can I start slandering Stephen Thompson as like who's objectively a very nice guy? It's just like untrustworthy, conniving. He conspires to put on these bad fights. Anthony, go get him. But that's that for that fight. Do we want to hit the next fight real quick? Well, we should probably. Let's do it. I'm not sure how much we have to say about this one. The dynamic seems pretty simple. Curtis Blades, Justin Willis. Obviously, it was pretty big when Justin Willis beat Mark Hunt. Somewhat signs of Mark Hunt slowing down, but also Justin Willis has a pretty good base to work off of as a heavyweight fighter. He's really powerful. He seems explosive and quick, at least has quick hands. He counters consistently. Whether you hit him or he manages to slip or block a punch, he's going to come back, and he's a pretty reliable combination puncher as well. Also, stamina seems pretty solid for a dude his size. So he's got a lot of good basic mechanics, and I do believe he has a wrestling background, doesn't he? No, maybe he's a football guy. Wikipedia says football. Either way, he's at AKA, so I'm sure there's some wrestling fundamentals being trained in. Is any of that enough to beat Curtis Blades?
I'm going to say no. Curtis Blades had his problem against Francis Ngannou, which popped up much as it did in the first fight, which is that Ngannou is sort of designed to fight people like Curtis Blades and or Cain Velasquez. That's his, that's where his counterpunching and physicality generally comes alive. Justin Willis sort of had his moment against an incredibly uninterested Mark Hunt. And this was part of a weird, depressing trifecta of performances from Hunt and the people who were also training with him. This was Hunt, it was Taito Iwasa, and it was who's the light heavyweight guy?
Tyson Pedro?
Tyson Pedro. I think they were all training under the same team and all came out with like career worst performances on one night. And I was just watching it and kind of feeling bad. I think Willis basically wants I think he has a good gas tank, but I do not get the impression that he is someone who wants a physical fight with people.
Yeah.
He wants to kind of pick people off. He's very much an outfighter despite his frame.
Mm-hmm. Almost kind of a counterpuncher by nature too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think he wants to be a slick outside fighter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Curtis Blades is actually that's a really good style matchup for him.
Mm-hmm.
He just because it's going to give him time and space to set up his entries. I think Curtis Blades has become more comfortable in taking shots. He might be a bit less so after that Ngannou fight, but he's just going to be able to he might have some issues like lining up his shots on Willis, but I don't think it's going to be the issue that it would have been a few fights ago, because he's definitely got a lot better at blending his strikes and takedown entries. So I just think he's just going to get into he's going to get into clinch situations and just gradually kind of outwork Willis over time. I don't think that he's I just don't think I can necessarily trust Willis to be at the kind of physical level that he'd need to be to get someone like Blades off him.
Yeah. I do have my concerns about how Curtis Blades is feeling after that devastating knockout loss. Although most likely, this is just my impression of Curtis Blades, he probably feels about that it was the same as many of the fights he has won, and he just wasn't given enough chance to get back into it. Because at least going into that, he was notably very tough to finish mentally. Mark Hunt hurt him really badly, and he gathered his wits, survived, got knocked down a second time, and still managed to set up a takedown and then go on to dominate the entire remainder of the fight. Alistair Overeem hit him with some tremendous shots in their fight. He's run into problems and never had an issue pushing through. So probably, hopefully, in his head, that's basically what happened in the Ngannou fight. And I think I tend to agree. Willis he's not as insanely fast as Ngannou. He also has 4 or 5 fewer inches of reach, and is significantly shorter than Ngannou. Blades is going to be the bigger man, and Blades does like to work his jab and his kicks from the outside to set his opponent up for the takedown. But we'll see. Willis might be kind of difficult to take down too. He's pretty solidly built, squat little guy. It's going to be an interesting test of a guy whose takedown defense hasn't really been tested. Whereas, Curtis Blades has shown off some of the best wrestling in the heavyweight division. But also Daniel Omialanchuk gave him horrible problems, and was very frustrating when they fought, being like a short little southpaw. So there's something there that I could see Blades struggling once it does get tied up and maybe becoming frustrated. I don't know. I still have to favor him. I like to pick wrestlers over inexperienced opponents most of the time, basically. And Blades is a very good wrestler, and his striking, specifically as it pertains to setting up those shots, has definitely gotten better despite what happened in the Ngannou fight. So I tend to agree. But we'll see. I'm actually kind of interested in that one. The more I think about it, I'm like, yeah, we'll see. Justin Willis might actually be a pretty good heavyweight, given some time to develop. All right. When we come back, we are going to get into the rest of this. I don't know, Phil, do we want to jump back and talk about last week's shit, or do we want to continue talking about this Nashville card in segment 2?
I think we can touch on like Formiga Figueiredo.
Okay.
That one seems to be the most interesting one on the remainder of the card. And then we can jump into last week's, because there was a lot of interesting stuff going on there.
Okay, then that's what we'll do after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Here in segment 2, we are hitting our final fight from next week's UFC Nashville card. God, I keep doing this, Phil. I already said weeks ago I was going to start calling these cards by the fighters' names. UFC Thompson versus Pettis. And on the undercard, a flyweight bout. It's a real shame what's happening in this division, Phil, because we're getting so many fights that should be interesting and meaningful for this division. Like, this should be the era of Davis and Figueiredo climbing to title contention. This should be like, oh man, this young killers, and instead it's like, what's happening with 125 again? It's not around anymore, is it? Oh yeah, there's still a fight in that division for some reason on almost every card. They're just trying to, the most cowardly way possible to get rid of a division, wait for everyone to lose and cut them when they do.
Yep.
But
it's basically the Ultimate Fighter, right?
Pretty much. It's an elimination.
Bantamweight.
Yeah, it's become an elimination division.
Yep.
So here we go. Who's going to get cut? Juicy Formiga or Davis and Figueiredo?
That is a tremendously depressing prospect.
Cutting Juicy Formiga, right? Like, this has always been a dude who's been this close to a title shot. He's been the elite gatekeeper in this division. And it's like, well, if you lose this one, you get cut, because clearly you're not worth it. Yeah, it sucks. But what do you think of the matchup? If your spirits are still strong enough to consider it.
I mean, it is a fascinating one. Figueiredo has to be like one of the most overwhelming physical forces we've ever seen in this division, if not the most overwhelming physical force in the division. Yeah. I mean, what the fuck did he do to poor John Moraga? Mm-hmm. Your boy.
Don't speak of it.
So, I mean, and he's one of these, there's a lot of guys you can see in this division where you can see that they've got, physical athletic potential. But he's one of the few ones that we've seen where it's really, like, it's been apparent when he first joined the UFC, but it has become only more so over time. And that is another thing that you kind of see that we saw with his middleweight brother from another mother, Yoel Romero, mm-hmm. is that he was a physical freak before he ever came to the UFC, but like it was when he got better at fighting, you started to realize just how high his physical ceiling was.
Mm-hmm. Romero and Figueiredo are both fighters who's like the amount of insane shit they do in the cage seems only limited by their confidence. Like, they can do it all. So it's just a matter of how willing do they feel to try this insane flying knee or what have you.
Yep. But then we have Jussier Formiga, who is like the consummate technician of the class, mm-hmm. who has only really lost to people who are some combination of very skilled and athletic. Mm-hmm. So the question is, how much is Figueiredo's like athleticism worth, and can he leverage it in a safe way against Jussier Formiga? Because Jussier Formiga's primary gift is his ability to take the back, and this is what, as we've noted, about flyweights before. One of the advantages of taking the back is that it's a position where scrambles and kind of scrambling ability is checkmated. Yeah,
even more so than mount. Like, back control is the place where the person really has to know how to technically escape to do it safely.
Yep. You can't just be like, because in a lot of the time in the rest of flyweight, you can be like, well, I don't have great takedown defense, but I'm pretty sure I can scramble out of any takedowns anyway.
I'm going to bounce off the ground like a Super Bowl anyway, so what does it matter?
And Deiveson Figueiredo has not fought anyone without getting into significant scrambles with them, and without often, like, including when he fought John Moraga, being the aggressor in terms of physicality. So the question is, how much is this fight Gunnar Nelson versus Cowboy Oliveira?
Oh man, that feels like a really strong comparison. It really does. Yeah, I would say the distinction between someone like Formiga and Nelson is that Formiga is a pretty good counterpuncher. He's got better footwork too, defensively. He doesn't just back up in straight lines. But yeah, that's a good comparison. And the unfortunate thing there is, like, I think there's a chance Formiga will not get thrashed as badly when they get going by his Cowboy Oliveira, but also perhaps less likely that he will then turn it around for a sudden finish afterwards. Because if I look at Formiga's losses, it has to be said, this man's on a really strong 3-fight win streak right now, which should make him losing and probably getting cut for it even more depressing. Because he's beaten Oka Sasaki, Ben Nguyen, and Sergio Pettis in his last 3. But if you look at his losses, Ray Borg, Henry Cejudo, Joe Benavidez, those are the last 3. And all of those are strong wrestlers, which is maybe something they have over from Figueiredo, although honestly, like, he's hit some good takedowns and is probably strong enough to muscle them anyway. But the other thing that stands out is that they were all pretty aggressive performances against Formiga. They were all fighters who I think seemed to take advantage of his sort of wait and see and exploit style of fighting. And that's the problem with the opportunist, is facing a fighter who just does not wait for any opportunity, tries to force every single opportunity with dire consequences. I kind of picture Figueiredo bullying him a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's going back to that first stoppage loss to Benavidez. That was really what Benavidez did to him, is that he just put an absolute ton of pressure on him until he wilted, and just physically overwhelmed him. And that has been the problem with Formiga, is that you can literally divide his opponents by physicality. If you go, you can put Borg Cejudo, prime Joseph Benavidez, and John Dodson on one side, and then you can put Sergio Pettis, maybe not Ben Nguyen, but you kind of, he's his own thing. Yeah. Ulka Sasaki, Dustin Ortiz, and Wilson Hayes, Zach Makovsky. You can put all these other guys on the other side.
Well, what about Chris Carriasso?
Yes. You can definitely put Chris Carriasso in the unathletic side.
Wow.
And let's just be thankful that Chris Carriasso retired, and so that we didn't have to watch Chris Carriasso against Deiveson Figueiredo, because they definitely would have made that fight.
Oh, yeah. Okay, for that reason. I was going to say otherwise. Like, hey, Carriasso had a really respectable run, goddammit.
I really like Chris Carriasso.
Yeah, he seems like a great guy. He did a lot with very little. But yes, I'm so glad I did not have to see a 37-year-old Chris Carriasso get destroyed by Deiveson Figueiredo. No interest. Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, Formiga has, I mean, that's why I think that the Nelson fight's a good comparison, and slightly, like, in retrospect, it feels less likely that Formiga gets that kind of turnaround finish. But even in that fight, seeing how it played out, would you pick Gunnar Nelson the second time if they erased that fight from existence and ran it again, but you knew what happened?
Like, yeah, I think I probably would.
Really?
Because I wouldn't really expect Cowboy Oliveira to get any better. Like,
that's fair. I mean, he did try to grapple with Gunnar, but he was also fucking him up so badly, and who knows, without that elbow cutting him open, how differently that fight would have gone.
Yeah, I mean, I think Deiveson. One of the things is that Figueiredo has shown much more evolution in his fights than Cowboy Oliveira did.
That's why the Romero comparison seems better, as an individual fighter.
Yeah, this guy is visibly a technically much better fighter than he was when he was winning a dubious split decision against Jared Brooks, which was only, 18 months ago or so. Whereas Cowboy Oliveira he's sort of the same guy. He just seems to think that he's a good wrestler. He's a good wrestler and grappler now.
Yeah. In some ways, it seems like he's gotten worse at striking, actually. But
yeah.
But even so, even if you see that fight playing out that way again, the fact that Formiga has been consistently a less potent finisher in the UFC than Gunnar Nelson by far is still sort of seems like a big hurdle if he's going to be experiencing the same kind of duress that Cowboy put Gunnar through.
Yeah. It's a really tough one for me, I think. Cause on the one hand, I can see, Figueiredo foolishly getting into scrambles with, because he thinks he's a really good grappler, getting into scrambles with, Jussier. But on the other hand, I can also see just like Formiga trying to go toe to toe with Figueiredo and just getting blasted. I think I'm going to pick with Figueiredo. I'm going to go with Figueiredo. I tend to pick like the crafty veteran in these positions, and I don't think I'm going to do it this time. I think I don't think he's much worse than Ray Borg, and Borg was able to just win out with sheer physicality against Figueiredo. He was definitely the less technical fighter, but just because he hit so hard and he didn't, he just kind of forced his way out of takedown situations and scrambles. He was able to just edge a decision out, and I think Figueiredo can definitely do that and then some.
Likewise for Henry Cejudo. Less potency than Figueiredo at the time. Has certainly changed that some, but he basically just overwhelmed Formiga physically. I agree. Formiga just leaves too much space, and the sudden comeback submission feels like slightly too much of a long shot for me to expect it. So yeah, I'm picking flyweight Romero as well. Looking forward to it though. Really wish it wasn't, essentially pointless, but it should be an interesting fight between two very good fighters. So, all of that to look forward to, next week's card. But, damn it, Phil, some shit popped off this last weekend in London. Before we get into discussing the fight, can we talk about Jorge Masvidal backstage with Leon Edwards just a little bit? Because it's, I wanna commend Jorge Masvidal on his incredible sucker punching technique. Because here's what happens, right? Most of you have probably seen this already. He's just knocked out Darren Till. Stunning one-punch knockout, silences the crowd, and then wins them back over with a charming post-fight interview. Goes backstage, he's getting interviewed by Megan O'Leary or someone, and Leon Edwards walks by. According to Jorge Masvidal, he's essentially calling him out, saying, we'll fight this day, you're a fucking scrub, you're a bum, we'll fight this day, maybe we'll fight right now. Masvidal swaggers up to Leon Edwards with his hands behind his back. As Edwards comes near, this is a key detail. Masvidal's left hand sits on the railing that's beside him. It's slightly ahead of the rest of him, right? It's in a position that tactically is very good for punching, but it certainly doesn't look like he's preparing to punch. The left hand is just resting on the rail. The moment Leon Edwards moves in any way, Jorge Masvidal belts him with a 5-punch combination of straight punches to the face. Just immediately throws down as hard as he possibly could. As he described it after the fact, the 3-piece and a soda. A quote that was very funny and which I'm already tiring of hearing people repeat.
Well, yes.
You gotta have a good sucker punch game, right? Jorge Masvidal is the East Coast Diaz brother. You don't fucking walk up on this dude backstage. And I'm glad to see that he could take...
Did Leon Edwards really walk up on him? Masvidal walks all the way over to him and punches him. I'm not really... this is the thing, I'm not really sure whether I like this particular...
What?
It's just lame. The man is in his mid-30s. What is he doing?
Phil, it strikes me that maybe you are lame, and that's why you don't like it.
It is entirely possible. I do like very boring fighters, and, I don't know. I just never found the entertainment with like people people scuffling. Like, it just makes people look like dumbasses. Like, even when, Frazier and Ali rolling around in the interview studio or whatever, like, just made them look like idiots.
I think it was really the cold, sort of hitman-like demeanor with which Masvidal approached this backstage scuffle that really sold me on it being one of his greatest moments. It was really just how good of a sucker punch it really was.
But like, anyone can do that.
I don't know, dude. To have no telegraph whatsoever and then throw a fucking 5-piece combination. I don't know, dude. I think most people are acting bad. I mean, like, how was the punching exchanges between John Jones and Daniel Cormier on their stage scuffle? Most of the time it's shitty technique, right? Masvidal came across very much like a guy who has been in a very similar situation many times before. He knew exactly what to do.
The thing is, I just don't find this tremendously edifying from, like, it's like, wow, this guy must sucker punch people all the time. It's like, well, he must be great to be around.
Do you think Jorge Masvidal did it to edify you, Phil? I think
he should have done.
I think he did it because your cowardly countryman, Leon Edwards, was talking mad shit and wasn't ready for a scrap.
How much older than Leon Edwards is he?
I don't know. He's like 35. How old is Leon? 27.
Must be like 27, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why that's why he lost. He got fucking sunned.
I've never, who the only person I will give a whole pass to for getting into extracurricular brawls?
Who's that?
Jake Shields, because that guy is a G.
Yeah, and no one's gonna get hurt.
Right? A, I know no one's gonna get hurt. B, he looks super awesome whenever he punches anyone. He's got his like wide-eyed, slightly terrified look on, and that's cool. And yeah, so with the exception of if you're not Jake Shields, don't throw hands with randoms.
Yeah, I want to have the Masvidal Edwards footage, but just Photoshop Jake Shields throwing a latte over Masvidal. Yeah, so Edwards is like desperately protecting his face, but instead it's just a latte that sort of falls like a few feet short of his feet. That would be great. Yeah, respect to Jake Shields. Come on, man. If you like Jake Shields this much, I mean, he hangs out with this kind of crew. He respects the scrappers, Yeah,
but that's why it's okay for him, because he's so intensely out of place doing it.
Absolutely.
That it at least has a kind of absurdity value to it.
Okay, let's talk about the fight proper. The one that Phil and all the grandmothers in the UK approve of. The one that took place for money. In front of thousands of screaming, bloodthirsty fans. Jorge Masvidal fought Darren Till. He got knocked down in the first round, and then he beat the dude. It was a pretty typical Jorge Masvidal fight, but with the added element of some of the aggression we have seen out of Masvidal in some of his more recent bouts. Really, what this fight, like the narrative the narrative this fight seemed to have to me was of experience. Masvidal did not run out of ideas. He had lots and lots of different options to try and go to, whereas I think Darren Till was pretty much fresh out of ideas a couple minutes before he got knocked out.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was thinking. And I was interested to see that, like, you also said this in your piece, where you were discussing the overhand left and how Masvidal knocked Till out, which I encourage everyone to read. Because this was one of the narratives of the card, was running out of ideas. Like, it was people sort of either having relatively limited games exposed, or just having a sort of menu of options which they exhausted. And that happened pretty quickly in this fight. Yeah, like as you said. And I think, so we mentioned in the fight, and well, I mentioned beforehand, and also you did a very good job of being one of the few people to pick Jorge Masvidal to win this.
Did you pick Till?
Yeah, I picked Till.
Oh, you scoundrel. Yeah, I was shocked, apparently. I was one of very few people to pick Masvidal. I kind of thought it would be more split than that.
Yeah, I mean, and it was interesting because when we talked about the Wonderboy fight, and we mentioned that, it was something of a stalemate performance where Till figured Wonderboy out by the end.
Yeah.
Whereas Masvidal kind of lost cleanly, and thus, Till had proven that he could adjust to the fight where
Given
Masvidal
4 rounds
couldn't.
of nothing happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
But the thing is, Till was able to adjust in empty space, essentially, to Wonderboy. And that he was able to adjust the timing of the single approach, which generally is the core of his game, which is just to sort of kick a bit at the leg, push people back, feint right hand, left down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just sort of it. I mean, even in the previews of, before the clips before the fight, you just saw that same feint, light right jab, left straight sequence playing out multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
So Till was able to adjust in the context of being able to do that a lot of the time. And Masvidal, and just being able to set up his timing for that single sequence over and over and over again until he'd figured out the exact way to get to Wonderboy with it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in this fight, it wasn't necessarily that wouldn't have worked on Masvidal, but it was the fact that Masvidal did an excellent job after the first few exchanges of slipping that punch, specifically the left hand,
mm-hmm.
and avoiding the uppercut, which is Till's main kind of change-up for it.
Mm-hmm.
But also that Masvidal just gave him far too much coming back to worry about. That he was not able to just sit and look for his timing on his entries again and again, because Masvidal was setting him up with body kicks. He was setting him up with combination punches coming back on the counter whenever Till came at him.
Mm-hmm.
He was countering Till's kicks, something that he also made great use of against Cerrone.
Yeah.
He's excellent kick counterer.
Absolutely. Yeah, he did it just like he did to Cerrone. Like, even when he eats the kick, he's going to make sure to hit you with a combination of strikes for daring to throw it. Till threw, I think, 2 kicks in this fight, and Masvidal did not need any time to eat that strike to be ready for it. And Till's not even that much of a kicker. He doesn't kick that often, but Masvidal just clearly experience comes through. The moment he knew a kick was coming, catches it. I think the first time he beamed Till on the chin with like a right hook over the top. Second time he was out of range for that because Till felt the kick being caught and tried to scooch away. And then Masvidal hit him with a really nasty low kick as he retreated. Both times immediately countered with combinations. There were also a lot of really good feints from Jorge Masvidal in this fight. There was just constantly giving Till information to process. And a lot of that information, especially the counters, the combinations ending with the left hook, were basically teaching Darren Till one basic lesson, which is like, that one thing you really want to do? Probably shouldn't do it. And he didn't have any other options. Like, he didn't have any other really ways of setting it up. That's kind of the reason I picked Masvidal. Like, I just haven't seen that much from Darren Till yet. I haven't seen him pushed in this way. And yeah, as it turned out, this was essentially, after his first title shot, his prospect loss. Where it's like, oh, we just found out Darren Till doesn't really know how to respond to pressure or counters. Like, if somebody can just fight well against him, basically, if someone can respond to what he's showing effectively, he doesn't really have that many other ideas.
Yeah, I mean, to his credit, he actually showed more aggression in this fight than I than I perhaps expected him to. Like, he definitely wanted to impose his game on Masvidal. It wasn't like that he, was just looking for one big shot that he'd been scared off by the Tyron Woodley loss. It was simply that he didn't have the tools, and that Masvidal ran him out of them very quickly. Is that, because you can see him doing things like, even, it's not just the defense, which obviously, that was clearly a problem already. It's the fact that he tends to, his options are really to be generally around relying on being insulated by his frame.
Yep,
just
already being out of reach.
Yeah, already being out of reach, leaning backwards, and that Masvidal would either press him with combinations, or he would kick his leg, or he would kick his body, and Till just couldn't figure out how to get back out of range. And he was like, can I pole counter any of this? And it was like, not really. And also that like Masvidal would increasingly start to change which one of the punches he would counter when Till was coming in. So that rather than, the first few times Masvidal would be avoiding the throwaway jabs and then trying to slip the left hand follow up. And Till doesn't really have any change ups aside from the uppercut for that left hand, but B, Masvidal just started to throw combinations as soon as the throwaway right came out, because he was just like, this isn't nothing's happening here. I'm not going to run into a proper jab here.
Yeah.
He's not going to hit me with a right hook.
Yeah, nothing's coming after the left hand, so as long as you can counter it effectively, finish your combination in the pocket. It's going to work. There was that one in the second round, the one big counter that basically was like, maybe this is a retrospective, looking back benefiting me, hindsight benefiting me. That's the phrase I'm looking for. But to me, that kind of looks like the moment where Till lost the fight, where he comes forward, he does the feint, the big left hand, kind of, I think, maybe expecting Masvidal to slip or to try to avoid, and Till has a really bad habit of sticking around in range after he throws, without moving his head. He kind of just expects his opponent to be awed by the offense he's throwing, and then maybe he can think of what else he's going to do to them, usually, grab them in the clinch or whatever after that. So he seemed like he was expecting to have a moment to see what was going to happen. And instead, Masvidal was already countering him after the throwaway jab. He threw a right hand over the top and then a left hook, which landed really hard and forced Darren Till to back off. And that was kind of his last moment of significant offense, even attempted in the fight. And after that, it was Masvidal coming forward. And I loved that adjustment at the end. This is, thanks for plugging my article, Phil. I'll tell other people listening now to go check it out. But the overhand left that he set up at the end, like, I love that he switched to southpaw, which, to my mind at least, my interpretation, was a clear adaptation to the problem he was starting to have, which is that Till was becoming wary of the combination punches and was just pulling away the moment that Jorge Masvidal would start to throw. And so Masvidal wanted to get into a position where he could close distance quickly, but then stay close enough that he could land the left hand that Till had not seen coming once throughout the entire fight so far. And doing a weird little shuffle step to blast forward and then landing in a southpaw position where you're basically like hip to hip with the guy that you're trying to hit with a left hand, there's no way you're going to just throw out both hands, lean back, and back away from that punch in time. You need other defensive options. You need something. And Till didn't have anything. I just love that Masvidal made that adjustment. And, I like seeing aggressive Jorge Masvidal, dude. Yeah, I thought this was like Till was fighting a good fight. I want to give him credit for that. He came out. Masvidal caught those kicks, yes, but he threw some kicks. And he was trying to put pressure on his opponent. He was trying to assert himself. But Masvidal fought a really, really good fight. It was just a really, I use this word too much, but a consummate kind of performance. He had an answer to everything that was coming. He had multiple options for what to do if those answers stopped working to make them work again. It was just, he was hitting the body, he was feinting, he was moving his feet, he was using his defense, he was countering, he was pressuring. It was like everything he could have possibly needed to do, he did. And yeah, that's why my main feeling is, what a brilliant veteran performance from a really experienced fighter.
I will also say the other problem with the whole like 3-piece and a soda thing is that it has hugely overshadowed the actually hilarious thing Jorge Masvidal did, which was sprinting out like a guided missile right into Darren's kick at the start of this fight.
Immediately sidekicking Darren Till in the dick.
Yeah,
that was brilliant.
One of the fastest and most athletic low blows I've seen.
Yeah, that was one of those ones where you watch it in slow motion replay. It's like, that's the standing version of the classic axe kick to the balls of a grounded opponent. Like, you watch it, it just feels so fateful. Like, the moment he starts with his back against the cage, you're like, oh, I know what's about to happen. Yeah, that was good.
So yeah, I mean, this fight was, we thought it might be boring, but it was in fact awesome from start to finish in like multiple different ways.
Yep. How about Darren Till? Can we spare a few words for him and where he goes after this? I mean, I think now it's very easy to say this man was rushed to a title shot. He was not properly tested on his way up. This is just what the UFC does. To anyone who gets a big or impressive win or has a lot of charisma right from their UFC debut, they are going to rush them to a title shot as quickly as possible. And then, sorry, buddy, you are now a top 10 fighter. You're going to stay there until you literally get knocked out of it.
Yeah, he needs to go to middleweight, amongst other things. Partly because, I mean, he's not a fast guy.
No.
It's like, he's a very accurate puncher, but he is not a quick dude.
Yep.
And his defensive liabilities and the fact that he's not much of a counterpuncher are combined with a loss of durability and, a general speed issue. And
lessened reaction time, another.
Yeah, this is going to be a problem moving forward.
Yeah.
This is a very good division with a lot of very, very hungry people in it. And guys like Vicente Luque are going to be watching that and thinking, you know what I like landing on people? I like landing left hands on people.
Yeah. Because even like the less developed...
Like Santiago Ponzinibbio likes to pressure people up by the fence.
Uh-huh. Even the less developed guys, like I might pick Gunnar Nelson over Darren Till. Like I can imagine Gunnar Nelson landing a big fucking straight down the middle and then wrestling Darren Till. Like he just has too many holes to be facing opponent. Like yeah, he seems to have seriously diminishing returns for this weight cut. He's cutting a huge amount. Like Masvidal cuts 20 pounds or something, and he looked a full weight class smaller than Till in the cage.
I mean, Gunnar Nelson is also just a tremendous puncher.
Yeah, but
just covers distance, just like Tyron Wood, in a similar way to like Tyron Woodley or even Jorge Masvidal in the last fight did.
Yeah, this is the thing I always say is if this Till, I know he's not actually that much taller than a lot of these guys. Like he's 6 foot, but he's a guy with like a long, heavily built frame. You know what I mean? He's not slim. He's very well built for a 6 foot tall guy with long arms and long legs. So like, if looking a full weight class bigger than Jorge Masvidal isn't winning you the fight and may in fact be making it easier for the little quick guy to beat you, then you don't need that size advantage. It's not helpful. Like if being that much bigger isn't helping, maybe being too much, maybe the size parity is not your main issue with opponents, and maybe feeling better, getting to spend more of your training camp on getting better and less of it on cutting 30, 35 pounds of water from your frame is a better investment of time. And also, having a better chin and fighting opponents who feel much, much slower than Jorge Masvidal's famously fast hands did that night. So, yeah.
Also, middleweight is just worse than welterweight.
It's worse,
He's just going to fight people who aren't as good as the people at welterweight, just not as, I mean, once you get up to the top of the division, sure, but it would give him time to learn if he has a reset in a new division.
Yes, absolutely. He needs that. Middleweight would be, hopefully at least, a buffer that would allow him to, because size is not his problem. Skills were his problem in this matchup, and middleweight, slower opponents, better durability against them, and just worse fighters populating most of the division, that would be the buffer he would probably need to sharpen up those skills. And he's 26, dude. He's not going to be cutting this kind of weight for long anyway. Like, just get it out of the way and move up. You'll probably be a light heavyweight someday. So, start the process now. So yeah, that's that. Let's take a break. This has been an insanely long segment. When we come back, though, we're going to get into the rest of this London card because it was pretty good. Some really interesting results. Leon Edwards versus Gunnar Nelson, Dominic Reyes versus Volkan Oezdemir, and more after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. The rest of UFC Masvidal Till still lies ahead of us. Leon Edwards versus Gunnar Nelson. That was the co-main event. Boy, it took looking at Wikipedia to remind me that for some reason this was a split decision win for Leon Edwards.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, is that I was going to say, one of the problems with Gunnar Nelson that we haven't really raised before is, his tendency to get robbed by the judges. I mean, ever since that unfortunate Rick Story loss, I mean, he's just struggled to get a break. And, this time all it would have taken would be another one of those judges seeing another one of those rounds for him, and he would have gotten, highly justified.
And there were so many rounds to give him. Was it the 1 minute of the fight that he won in the third, or... Wait. Was that the only part of the fight he won?
He did something in the first round as well.
He did something. I think, he took Edwards down. And couldn't control position, and then got out wrestled, and then got hit with a big elbow. Leon Edwards. Can you tell I'm relishing this? the final long-awaited destruction of Gunnar Nelson. No, I have to say, as I do every time he loses, Gunnar Nelson seems like a great guy. He seems really cool. Got a great dry sense of humor. I was just watching that video of him doing like sexy aerobic dancing in like a class setting. You ever seen that?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
I mean, he's done that for a while.
Yeah.
Like it's one of his things, and yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, just deadpan Gunnar Nelson wearing like a spandex leotard, just humping the air. It's something I never knew I needed to see, but I'm glad I have. He seems great, but as it turned out, the all-rounder who relishes in being able to do everything, he did everything he wanted to Gunnar Nelson. He out-wrestled him. He was at least as successful, if not more successful, in the aggregate, controlling position on the ground. And he landed the only meaningful, hurtful shots, really, in the entire fight.
Yeah. This was kind of case study in why would you want to be well-rounded in modern MMA? Why don't you just stick with being why, looking at Leon Edwards, do you not just stick with being a high-power striker and just learn functional takedown defense? You don't have to out-wrestle people all the time. You don't have to try and out-grapple people and get submissions and so on them. But, being good at lots of things can be really useful. It means that you can get into situations with Gunnar Nelson when you're on the floor with him. You can be like, I don't necessarily need to escape from this guy. That first round, again, God knows what other round could have possibly been given.
Gone. It must have been the third. Someone must have given him the first and the third.
Yeah. But if he'd lost that first round more convincingly, and he might have lost that round more convincingly if he hadn't been able to go on the offense with his grappling. So, yeah. Leon Edwards, honestly, he is a pleasure to watch. For me at least. I don't know about you. And this is also, this fight, I'm sure, felt quite satisfying in its own way, because both this and the co-main event, both this and the main event were kind of people with somewhat limited games. And again, we come back to the idea of running out of ideas, that we've limited games that we've criticized in the past, and that in Nelson's case, when his flaws have been exposed, as against Santiago Ponzinibbio, it's been because Ponzinibbio poked him in the eyes, and that was the only reason. But in fact, it is, maybe he just really isn't a very good defensive fighter, and maybe he really is quite one note in his offense.
Maybe he's just a right hand running into a body lock on the feet. Yeah. It was also the other parallel between this and the Masvidal main event, aside from both men getting into a scrap backstage afterwards, was that this was the notably I mean, it's paralleled on both sides of the matchup in each case, because the sort of one note guy was sort of, I hate to use this word, but exposed by someone whose like main thing is sort of their well-roundedness, their willingness to take the fight wherever it needs to go. Now, Masvidal didn't have that against Till, but for example, Edwards grappling Nelson here felt very reminiscent of Masvidal grappling confidently against Damian Maia, or Robert Whittaker against Jacare Souza. Like, there's a couple notable fights in recent memory where the person who against the specialist goes in there, and at least in moments, they beat the specialist in their game. Primarily, it seems because they're just confident that they have technical answers everywhere. Like Leon Edwards and Jorge Masvidal both have a well-developed game everywhere. And so does Robert Whittaker. You know, like Robert Whittaker's an underrated submission grappler. We saw that like when he fought Uriah Hall, for example. He's a great wrestler who's getting better in that regard, and a really polished striker. Same for both of these guys. And when he fought Jacare Souza, it was like he got taken down. He didn't hesitate. He didn't freak out. He didn't think, a dynamic that I remember Paul Felder actually describing in commentary during this card. He didn't have the reaction of, well, I can't even do the right things because this guy's so much better than me. He's going to have the answers for the right moves, so I just can't do anything. And fighters tend to freeze up when these kind of specialists get them in their house, you know? And Robert Whittaker against Jacare, like, he just did all the right things and escaped. And Leon Edwards just did all the right things and out-wrestled Gunnar Nelson. Like, he just had better clinch position, better head position, consistently got underhooks. He had a technical answer everywhere the fight went. And as it turns out, Gunnar Nelson only has technical answers in one phase. And he couldn't get to that phase, but for 1 minute of the last round.
It was also that he focused on, a lot of the time he focused on, wrestling positions, which have been proven to work quite well against BJJ specialists a lot of the time. A lot of that first round was him just getting the seatbelt on Gunnar Nelson, just controlling him with a single, with a single hook and then a seatbelt position, kind of Phil Davis style. And yeah, and it also showed that, what we've said about Leon Edwards in the past, which is that he's very good at picking out appropriate game plans for people, and that he picked up on Nelson's tendency to back out of the clinch with his hands down, and fucked him up for it.
Those elbows he landed on Cowboy over and over, they worked just as well, if not even better here.
Yep. He was like, this part of my game worked great against this guy. It will work equally well against the other guy. And yeah, I mean, just in general, a consummately impressive performance from, one of the most underrated, like, welterweight dark horses out there.
Yeah, which I kind of get because he's got kind of a quiet style. He's sort of a spoiler as a fighter. He, he will happily win a slow fight if he feels himself winning. But I agree. I also find Leon Edwards to be a pleasure to watch because he's a really granular fighter. Like he comes in with these well-tailored game plans, but for a lot of fighters, that tends to mean like, okay, you avoid this phase of the fight, you avoid that phase. Edwards came in here and he knew which parts of the grappling and wrestling phases might favor him. He wasn't like, I have to avoid tangling with this guy at all. He came and was like, well, if I get to this clinch position and just get head position and tie up an arm, like, what the fuck is he going to do? If I get on top of him and tie up one leg and then control the forearm with one hand, like, he can't get out. He doesn't have the answer for that. So yeah, it was a to use the word that you just used that I've already overused, a consummate performance by Leon Edwards. And I, for one, am very excited for Edwards versus Masvidal in the fall. Very much looking forward to it.
Masvidal is trying to duck out of that, but I suspect they can't not make that now.
Yeah, but when keeping it real goes wrong.
Yeah, we did see Edwards' one flaw, which is I think that he has so much that he wants to do and can do that he struggles to keep it all in his head a lot of the time, and that so he does have these moments where he just runs out of mental gas very slightly and gets hurt. And we kind of saw that a little in the third round because he was like, I'm pretty sure I'm winning this. I don't have to do much. And then we saw what can happen if you let people set up even limited games on you over and over again. Because he was just like, I don't need to attack this guy. Whereas, in fact, it probably would have been safer
Yep.
for him to just consistently pressure Nelson at that point. But instead, he kind of let Nelson set up the right hand entry multiple times on him until Nelson was able to hit it and kind of get him into mount. And he was just like, right, I'm just going to close up shop here. Fuck it.
Just as you said with Darren Till, against Stephen Thompson, he finally found a way to make his one good shot work. Given time, Gunnar Nelson can do the same thing.
Yeah, and this is the thing. This is how limited games work. Is that they can, given the context for them, like given if they can work on anyone.
Yeah.
And if they're given time and space to, but it's the fact that like how many ways are there of shutting you out of the fight? And as it turned out against Leon Edwards, quite a few.
Yeah, no, I do agree. That's going to be Edwards' thing holding him back. Like going forward, is he has the opposite of running out of ideas. He's so good at everything, and it seems to have so many options before him at all times that he can sort of be befuddled by the number of things he's capable of doing, and just can't quite choose the right one. But I think that might improve with experience. Like Edwards has built this new skill set pretty damn quickly. It was already back in 2015 that he surprised many of us by wrestling pretty competitively with Kamaru Usman. But that was like it surprised us because it was the first time we'd really seen any of that out of him. And he's 27 now and is very clearly improving all of those phases that he's been working on. So I think like by 30, he could be a Masvidal type, and possibly a more focused, better suited one for his division. But he's getting there, man. And I also really enjoy watching Edwards fight. Why don't we talk about?
Sorry, just like Masvidal also has tended to have those moments a lot in his career. The kind of needing to get his game back rolling, struggling to fit it all in early, getting dropped early, fading out late. Yeah, but Edwards already is doing that much less than Masvidal does. I think he's much more focused, frankly, on winning than Masvidal used to be.
Yeah, and I think he does also. Masvidal definitely has his thing where he hits a takedown on pretty much everyone just to show that he can. But Edwards really seems to be enjoying the thing that GSP always talked about, of like, I'm going to beat you where I can beat you, and then I'm going to beat you where you think you can beat me. And by the end of the fight, you are going to be broken. I think he may turn into that kind of fighter, someone who just really enjoys proving to people that whatever they thought they could do to him, he can do it to them better. So I am looking forward to the ascension of Leon Edwards very much at 27, and now really like up there in the top 10. I hope. He may have been 7 or something coming into this fight actually, but yeah, like this is good turnover.
Oh no, he's gone down. I think he's gone down or something.
What?
I think so.
Get all these old people out of this fucking division. Stephen Thompson, we're done with you. You're not getting a title shot anyway.
I will say, he's also got a brother who also seems extremely good. Earlier in his career, who is at middleweight at the moment and is younger than him and is undefeated as an amateur and a pro.
All right. Good to know.
Fabian Edwards.
Keep your eyes out for him. Okay, let's talk about the light heavyweights then. Dominic Reyes, Volkan Oezdemir. You know what the big question for this matchup is, Phil. Who won the fight?
I mean, again, this was like the Gunnar Nelson, Leon Edwards, this fight. I just feel like, Oezdemir just got crazily robbed here. Like, it's just a shock to me, really. I don't see how. No, it was. Okay, I am trying to wind you up slightly. No, I thought it was 2 very close rounds and then 1 clear Reyes round.
Yeah.
I think that's the only real way you can score it in any particular, like, I wouldn't be outraged by an Oezdemir win, but the idea that, like, the commentary was weirdly biased towards
the commentary was
Oezdemir.
Yeah. I like Hardy and Gooden, but do you remember, like, They would have done the same thing in the Gunnar Nelson fight, I'm sure, if they'd had any chance. If it wasn't so obvious that Edwards was beating him until the very end. Because I remember when those two guys called Nelson's story, and they seemed to have no idea what was actually playing out in the fight they were watching.
Much as I do love those guys, that was one of the most horrific like biased performances from a commentary team that I've seen.
This felt like that. I like them too. Like, I think Hardy as an analyst is maybe like the very best working with the UFC right now. He does a really good job, and good and charismatic and fun, and they have good chemistry. It's just they have that Rogan tendency of grabbing onto narratives. And in this case, like, certainly while watching it live, like, I was seeing Reyes win a fairly slow fight, or a fairly close fight, rather. And I actually thought this was a pretty good fight. Other people were saying it was bad. Like, They didn't enjoy it, like, but I guess because they wanted it to be a banger with someone getting knocked out. But I thought it was a pretty tactical kickboxing battle. I didn't think it was a bad contest at all.
Yeah, people want Reyes to be the next big thing. That's the problem.
Destroy
they want him to be. Yeah, they want him to completely annihilate Oezdemir, so you can just be like, you know what, this is the guy to dethrone John Jones.
Yeah, but you know, like, it was pretty good in my opinion. And what I was saying is that certainly the commentary and having to listen to it while watching this fight did intensify my feeling that some fuckery was afoot. That somehow Dominic Reyes was being conspired against to have this win taken away from him. I did feel pretty clearly that Dominic Reyes won. I thought he landed the better shots that just went totally uncelebrated or commented on during the second round. Several really heavy low kicks and body kicks. 2 or 3 really clean, hard left hands right to the middle of Oezdemir's face. And I didn't think Oezdemir got that much done. Oezdemir, I mean, whoever you think won the fight, definitely our pre-fight impression of Oezdemir as like essentially a 1-round fighter does kind of, you know what I mean? Like, he got 1.5 rounds in there maybe, but he definitely lost significant potency after trying to knock Reyes out in the first. And Reyes, on the other hand, say what you will, but this is a light heavyweight with power and a chin. Okay, so already a couple legs up on Corey Anderson, who can win like a 3 and quite likely 5-round kind of fight tactically. So like, even though he didn't knock Oezdemir out, like, this is kind of the stuff I want to see out of Dominic Reyes. He had a tough, aggressive, very powerful opponent who seemed to have broken his nose pretty early into the first round, and he used his feet, pot-shotted, and worked his way to a win, which is impressive to me.
Yeah, it's just the problem that, yeah, people want him to be immediately elite, and they want to be thrilled with the idea of this guy taking on John Jones. They wanted him to pound Oezdemir into mush. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a more troublesome fight for him than a lot of us gave him credit for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, props to Oezdemir, I think, who has definitely improved. He's definitely become a more functional fighter within, you know, who he is. Mm-hmm. Like, his ability to, like, the takedown he hit in the first round was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
He's clearly becoming more of a kind of pressure boxer, pocket style, whereas before he was really more of just, I didn't really get the impression that Oezdemir had an idea of who he wanted to be as a fighter.
No.
in some, that he was just kind of taking the fight as it came.
He was like a 220-pound Alex Morono before.
Yeah. He clearly knew what he wanted to do in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we saw some of the problems with Reyes, you know, that he's, like many, you know, tall fighters that we've seen, he's not tremendously comfortable with combination punching.
Mm-hmm.
That when someone comes in on, you know, he's used to being insulated by his reach and being able to either grab the clinch or just back straight out and push the other guy off him. That he wasn't enjoying having to get stuck into either, Oezdemir was both pretty good in the clinch and also was just willing to take shots and stay on him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, but he did a good job of kind of staying composed and working Oezdemir down. And, you know, one of the ways that he did that was just by having a more diverse approach. One of the things that puzzled me in this fight was not in the fight, but like seeing people online, there were people that scored the third for Oezdemir.
I know, because he was coming forward. Honestly, like, people look at that and they think whoever is coming forward is winning the fight.
But there were huge stretches where he wasn't, where he was just circling around the outside of the cage getting punched in the body.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't understand that.
That was That was a puzzler.
Yeah, but that being said, like, it was a good performance from both guys. Like, I don't think either guy's stock went down. I agree with you. Uzdemir's style has not changed. That's probably somewhat, oh God. Phil? Phil? Well,
hey.
Well.
I mean, the only question here is, how long did you bang on before you realized that I wasn't there anymore?
I know.
Did you finish the podcast and get to the call-outs?
No, unfortunately Skype is a real tattletale, so it lets me know when the connection drops right away. Yeah. Otherwise, who knows? I mean,
yeah,
could have been an eternity. Might have been the longest episode of the show yet if you had just dropped off and I hadn't noticed.
Danny Roberts robbed against. Would you agree, Phil? I'll take that as tacit agreement.
Shut up, Phil. You talk too much.
You know what scares about this fight?
What the fuck was I saying? Nothing important. Uzdemir fought a good fight. Dominic Reyes fought a good fight.
He's no Johnny Walker.
He's no Johnny Walker. That's for damn sure.
Shown us any of the incredible things that Johnny Walker has shown us. All he's shown us is boring stuff, like technical kickboxing ability.
Yeah.
And the ability to fight 3 rounds.
Yeah. He hasn't even burst his labrum while celebrating. You know, like, what a fucking pussy this Dominic Reyes is.
Yeah.
I think that's about it on that fight, right? Do you want to talk about Nathaniel Wood?
Yeah, that was awesome.
Nathaniel Wood seems pretty good.
Yeah. So I first saw him, I think it was Cage Warriors 74. I saw it live. And it was one of those cards where the actual people that I significantly remembered being impressed by from it were not the ones in the main event or the co-main event, because it was, I think, Pani Kianzad and Nicholas Dalby were both, I think, either defending or maybe fighting for belts in the co-main and main. And they were both like good functional fighters who you could tell were, who I could tell were already brushing up against the like functional limits of how good they could be. Mm-hmm. Like Nicholas Dalby is just not very athletic, but he's already like relatively well-rounded and aggressive and attacking people and so on. And, you know, I was just looking at him thinking like, yeah, that's really good. I think you're about 90% as good as you can be. And I don't think you're going to get much better beyond this point. I just don't see how you can like overcome clear physical limitations for both those fighters. Mm-hmm. The ones which stood out to me were people from the rest of the card. And they were Joe Duffy, Saul Rogers, and Nathaniel Wood. And I remembered all 3 of them just like jumping out. And yeah, so it's been great to see like Nathaniel Wood consistently get better from fight to fight, especially as he's been coming into the UFC. You know, there's been no Tom Duquesnoy type performer, you know, where you're slightly like, is this? He seems to have somewhat hit a ceiling here. Or, you know, you could see him scraping up against it even before he hit his ceiling against Cody Stamann. But Nathaniel Wood has just kind of gotten better throughout his UFC performances.
Yeah, he took his licks when he fought Johnny Eduardo. Eduardo was actually pretty close to finishing him. I mean, he hurt him in the first round at least. But like, and you could say from one perspective, he's faced less experienced people since then, but he has come into those matchups looking extremely determined to make those people deal with every facet of his MMA game right from the start. And against Eduardo, it was the well-roundedness that won him the fight. It was the willingness to go for a takedown and also like even in that fight, like he was getting tagged. It was more resistance than he's used to, but he was pushing through and looking to use those exchanges to set up his takedown, to get it to a more favorable position. So yeah, like he's not only looked like a good athlete and very physically strong, like the takedowns he's hitting on people, like the takedown he hit on Quinones, who's a pretty good wrestler and kind of a grinder himself sometimes, was impressive. But he also just looks like a intelligent, well-prepared kind of fighter as well. He seems to take the right approach to each opponent that he's fighting. And it doesn't always reflect in the exact same kind of performance. So, good shit. Any particulars that like stood out to you from this fight?
Just that this was, yeah, like you said, it was exactly the right performance, and he actually managed to pull it off incredibly cleanly. Mm-hmm. I mean, because I was expecting Quinones is a tremendously scrappy guy, mm-hmm. and he's also, he's big and long and gangly and just almost guaranteed to be problematic unless you snuff him early. And instead, Wood just kind of kept him on the back foot. He countered Quinones' kicks with punches, never let him get away with anything, but he didn't lose sight of his own defense. Like, Wood barely got hit in the head in this fight.
Yeah.
Despite continually moving forwards.
Really aggressive, dynamic pressure, but pretty intelligent looking. Like he just kept Quinones backing up, not moving his head right on the end of his punches, and he was rolling under and sidestepping everything that was coming back at him.
Yep. He attacked, he took a few leg kicks, but he was, that was always going to happen.
Yeah.
But it was the fact that he was, consistently punishing Quinones for using them. I think he knocked him down maybe twice off, but at least he caught him off balance from leg kicks with punches at least twice, and attacked with his own leg kicks as well. Mm-hmm. And then Quinones was like, all right, I'm going to lock up with this guy. Outside trip, move to the back, rear naked choke. I mean, it was immensely impressive. I mean, the level of diversity and like the amount of different parts of the MMA game coming together. Yeah. I mean, this is a guy who is, again, 25?
Yep.
I think.
He's 25.
And he said afterwards, he's in no rush, in terms of, zooming up the division, which is fine because there's a million amazingly good bantamweights for him to fight out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, bantamweight rules.
Clearly he just doesn't want his nickname to become defunct too soon.
Yeah.
So he's going to keep fighting prospect level competition in the UFC. But yeah, that was what stood out to me as well. It was not just the diversity of his attack, but like the professional feeling aggression with which he put those things together. No hesitation, all based on the idea of pressuring Quinones to force him to fight his fight. Just one technique after the other. Like he didn't hesitate. He didn't run out of ideas. There's still tests out there that Nathaniel Wood needs to face, but goddamn, he has been passing these early ones really, really impressively and seems to look better and sharper and more confident each time. So,
and you know what his reaction to that fight was afterwards? It was frustration that he was like, oh yeah, I took too many leg kicks. He got me down once.
It was like,
I need to work on that in the gym. It's like, do you realize that was an almost flawless performance, right?
It was totally lopsided fight in his favor, yeah. But that is also often a characteristic of good fighters who improve quickly, is just not being satisfied with winning, wanting to win more and more impressively. Yeah. Bantamweight rules. It's so good. Fortunately, they're going to cut it next from the UFC. But let's spare just a couple words here at the end of this segment for Claudio Silva, Danny Roberts. Really, the big story here was the weird stoppage. But I kind of want to supersede the weird stoppage. I want to wipe it from your memory by reminding you that this, not Masvidal Till, should have gotten Fight of the Night honors. It was an insanely back and forth, nonstop, scrappy, scrambly war. This fight fucking ruled. Claudio Silva is a welterweight Darren Elkins or Hani Yahya, and Danny Roberts brawls with everyone no matter who they are. I really, really enjoyed watching this fight.
Yeah, this was awesome. Like, in a way that really disparate style matchups are really often not.
Yes.
I mean, normally, we've talked about this before, normally they just go, one guy imposes his game, and that is the end.
Yep.
But no, this was just Claudio Silva getting relentlessly fucked up on the feet, and then Danny Roberts getting caught in horrific positions on the ground.
Yep.
And then sometimes Claudio Silva getting fucked up on the ground.
Yep. Yeah. It definitely had even for the beginning, Claudio Silva was winning on the feet too. He was landing his kicks and being really weird and awkward. It's really the distinction between this and a disparate style matchup, to use your term, that doesn't end up in an exciting fight, is that both of these guys are just not, well, to be a little crass with it, not good enough to not have this kind of fight. Like, Claudio Silva is a Darren Elkins. His striking is extremely ugly. He knows that just pressuring and running forward and grabbing onto people is his way to win. So he's going to do a minimum of striking that he needs to do to get a chance to just bull rush forward through whatever you throw at him and grab onto you. And that is a style that invites counter punches. Danny Roberts, on the other hand, brawls with everyone, as I said. And I painted that before this fight as the drawback that would have him, like part of the drawback that would have him losing here. But in fact, it can be a benefit as well. Danny Roberts may fight down to the level of his competition in some respects. He may, you don't have to be that good to get him to slug with you, like against Mike Perry. But he is going to keep scrapping and brawling if you are beating his ass too. So it was just both guys being open enough and aggressive enough for the fight to never, ever slow down. It was awesome. And how about Claudio Silva, dude? Like, this is now, his UFC record is insanely good for a guy who's been out on the bench for most of it.
Yeah, I think in the B staff picks, I think I was just like, he's like a slightly more entertaining Leo Santos. Just pops up out of nowhere every now and again, gets like a weirdly good win, and then just disappears.
Yeah. Man, like he's insanely tough. That has to be said. I thought he was done at several points in this fight, totally rocked. And the moment his body touches the ground, he's just instinctively shooting for submissions and scrambling again. Love it, man. It was a fantastic fight. Really strong card, in fact, especially as it went on. The whole main card I thought was pretty stellar. And
I do want to shout out one last thing before we, Mark Giacchese.
Oh, I thought it would be Safirbek Safarov.
Yeah, he so far off legality. No, Mark Giacchese, thrown to the wolves as, the UFC does with prospects, given a tremendously hard style matchup. Just a very skilled opponent, one probably more skilled than him.
Yeah.
And came out with an awesome game plan and kind of ran away with it over Joe Duffy. I mean, he basically decided, when Joe Duffy sits down on his jab, I'm going to kick his calf out from under him. And that was sort of as Jordan Breen would say, the straw that stirred the drink for him, because Joe Duffy clearly did not want to exchange in any way with the physical, this is the problem with, why athleticism is cheating, is that Joe Duffy had to beat that tactic. Joe Duffy pretty much had to consent to exchanging with Mark Giacchese, but Giacchese is so physically damaging, so overwhelming. This is true of striking and grappling, in this kind of situation, that to exchange with him, to sit down on the jab anyway, as he was sort of forced to a bit later in the fight, it's just instinctively something that you want to avoid. He did not have the raw, young man athletic confidence that someone like Nasrat Haqparast did, where he was just like, you know what, I'm just going to come through this and fuck you up anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It kind of makes me mad when these things happen, because it's
despite the UFC rather than
yes.
Yeah.
It's validating a promotional model that is completely hack, lazy bullshit. I made this comparison on the Vivisection last week, but the UFC matchmakers are essentially J.K. Simmons and Whiplash. Mm. They're like, what the best way to create great fighters is is to not try taking care of them or thinking of them as people at all, and just to smash until one of them is maybe good. Like, that's the thought process. Is like, you probably get a lot fewer great fighters in the aggregate, but you might get a really great fighter who lucks out and makes it through the insane gauntlet we force every promising prospect to experience. And good for Mark Jacasey getting a win, but goddamn it, it sucks because he had to go get his ass kicked for 3 fights, and they give him another tough matchup to win, and he's not going to get a fucking step back after this, I'll tell you that much. Beating Joe Duffy, like, hopefully those improvements are going to carry through to the next level of competition because you're back in the mix, buddy. But yes, anyway, good for Mark Jacasey. Big upset. I certainly did not see that one coming. So, good shit from him. Good shout. And what a good show from us. Don't you all agree? This is the end of it. If you don't agree, you should feel happy about that. Before we wrap it up, Phil, do you have any things the children should know about this week?
Nope, just the preview of Thompson Pettis coming out.
All right. As for me, Phil shouted it out earlier, and then I mentioned it myself, being an egomaniac. But if you haven't seen it, you should go to Bloody Elbow and check out my piece, Till versus Masvidal, Why the Overhand Left is the Southpaw Killer, breaking down that knockout and finding basically any excuse I can to sneak some GIFs of James Toney into an MMA piece. So go give that a look as well. That's probably it from me this week. But next week, we will be back with another episode of Heavy Hands. Ahead of us on the schedule, of course, after Wonderboy versus Pettis, Barboza Gaethje is looking like a strong ESPN card, and then we've got Holloway versus Poirier too. And I'm not sure how I feel about that one just yet, but there's certainly some exciting stuff to look forward to. So for all that coverage and breakdown, whatever nonsense, you know where to find it. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Heavy Hands. Find us on social media. Twitter is usually the best place for that. You can find Phil there at Evil Greg Jackson, and myself at Boxing Bush with the B-U-S-C-H. And that is it for us this week. Thank you again. And until next time, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you know you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.